Well, can you believe it? It's 2021. 2020 is behind us, kind of. Which is to say, like every New Year's, nothing happens really. Nothing has really changed because a ball drops or a number shifts. But there is a value in imagining a different year, a new beginning, a brighter future filled with hope, and there's also value in making some commitments that support that vision. What will 2021 be for you? What will 2021 be for St. John's? Right now, I think it is fair to say that there are billions of people on this planet longing to go back to some semblance of what life used to be. But this morning's gospel, although filled with hope, comes with a warning to not go back by the same way, but a different one. In this story, these wise travelers crossing borders to see a newborn king encounter Herod and ask him for guidance. Herod has no guidance to offer, only fear and manipulation. He tries to hide his evil intentions by advising them that once they discover where the child is, they should come back by the same way and let him know this child's whereabouts so that he too could pay his respects. But in a dream, these travelers were warned not to go back by the same way. Well, this morning, I have a dream. That dream is that we go back by a different way. Getting back to so-called normal is a dangerous concept. Certainly, we don't want to get back to structural racism, but rather find new ways to transform policy and behavior that respects the dignity of all people. Certainly, we don't want to get back to the divisiveness we have felt with our fellow citizens, but rather find a way to deepen understanding and community. And certainly, we don't want to go back to ways of doing church that we now know have isolated us and hindered us from sharing the faith, hope, and love we embrace. When the pandemic hit, I worried about what it would mean for St. John's. It's taken a while, but I finally realized that we have, on one level, been offered a gift. We have been in a grand experiment, the likes of which has never happened. Think about it. What if we were approached by sociologists who wanted to do an experiment? And what if they proposed that we close our doors for a year just to see what happens? We would have never in 1,000 years come up with such an idea or agreed to such an experiment. It took a pandemic to actually cause this wild idea to come into being. And what is the result? St. John's has evolved, and I believe is stronger now than ever. This experience is making us ready to open ourselves to a different future. That being said, now I'm concerned about how we return. And so should you. We are so ready to return. But here's a question you may not want to hear. Is a year long enough to snap bad habits? What bad habits? The really, really, really bad habit is this. We expect people to come to church, and we've lost the practice of the church going to the people. One example, the stuffiness of our tradition has built an entire theology around handling communion. During the pandemic, our own national church persisted in not allowing us to do communion online, because heaven forbid that the priest blesses the bread and wine from a distance. The priest must touch the vessels of the bread and the wine at the altar, a practice, by the way, only added in the last revision of our prayer book. And yet we act like it goes back to the days of Jesus. Although there is a provision of bringing communion to those who cannot physically come to church, it is done privately and not with the community. But look what happened at St. John's. We asked a new question. Is there a way to respect our tradition and also meet a need? Here's an idea. We will bless the bread and wine at the altar the week before we share communion and then treat everyone in the parish like a shut-in, delivering communion to their doorstep, then sharing communion simultaneously online the following Sunday. It's hard to measure, but this effort has included more and more people at our table, even if virtually. We could have ignored our rules about communion and simply blessed the bread and wine on Zoom, but then we would have missed out on another revelation. The delivery service has created new relationships. It has reminded people that they have not been forgotten and has opened our minds to new encounters and revelations. And it has allowed those who are shut-ins to be fully included in the communal act of the Eucharist, to be with all of us as we share that sacred moment. If we had simply done Eucharist online, we would have not seen the value of going out and bringing the gift directly to homes. So by holding the tension between our traditional teachings while also being determined to connect, we found a different way. So don't you see why I'm concerned about going back to the table that people must physically come to, as opposed to bringing that table to them? Don't get me wrong. I want to see you all in person. I really do. I also think the act of leaving your house and making the effort to meet together is a spiritual act. I'm not proposing laziness as a quality, but while we are in this grand experiment, we must not miss the opportunity to examine and recreate ourselves and our sense of mission. We must go back by a different way. If anything, today's story should humble our traditional religious mindset. Who is it that is looking for what's next? Who is it that is seeking new revelation and actually goes to greet Jesus? Not the religious leaders and scholars. Shepherds and astrologists from other countries and traditions. The religious scholars and their organized communities whose scriptures foretold this event were asleep at the wheel, nowhere to be found. They missed the quiet and beautiful way God was choosing to emerge in the world. We must heed the warning they bring to us. Find a different way back, which, by the way, affirms the idea of going back, but just find a different way back. This story also models for us the reminder to offer God what is most valuable to us. These overwhelmingly expensive gifts they bring from great distances are reminders that we need to be willing to offer to God our most precious theological and ecclesial possessions, being willing to lay them at the feet of Jesus and let God show us the way. Are we willing to let go of some things, embrace new things, and cross new borders as we evolve as individuals and as a church? But we are living in a time of revelation. And before closing, and in lieu of our normal reflection time, I want to invite you, if you are willing, to use the chat box and mention something good that has emerged for you during this challenging time. What new practice, what new habits, what new patterns, what new relationships have emerged in this time for you? I invite you to share them. Deep relationship with neighbors, finding joy in less structured time, reconnecting with friends, grandchildren, daily walks in nature, to see and know my neighbors, Watercolor painting. I love it. Reading stories every night to my grandsons in Benicia. Reading, calling old friends and reconnecting by phone. New practices, Qigong, gratitude. I actually lost weight. Zooming with friends. Cooking again, knitting things. Someone gained weight. More interaction with distant friends. New exercise program. Being more in tune with coworkers and families. Nesting. These are wonderful things. Amazing gifts and revelations that have come to you during this time. So maybe, like me, you too are a little concerned about things going back to the way they were. How can we take what we have learned and the new patterns we have established into what's next for us? So starting next week, I will begin a sermon series about how to find a different way back, both as individuals and as a church. It's never too early to prepare for what's next. Amen.